If you look at the income statement of a retailer or manufacturer, you'll always see a line item called cost of goods sold or cost of sales. And that just represents the cost of the inventory that was sold. So let's say Walmart pays $8 to buy a piece of inventory and then sells it for $10. The cost of goods sold would be $8 and that would appear on Walmart's income statement. Now, what about a service provider? Let's take Twitter. Twitter doesn't make a physical product. They don't purchase a physical product and then sell it to people like Walmart. They provide a service. They provide a website and an app that many people use. So they would have an account called cost of revenue that appears on their income statement. Not all service providers have cost of revenue, but Twitter and a number of other companies happen to do so. Now, you might be wondering then, what is this cost of revenue? Well, it's very difficult to define. Some companies will define it as costs incurred to produce revenue, which is very general and vague, and we'll get to that in a minute. But some other companies say costs incurred to deliver the service. So Facebook, for example, says any costs incurred to deliver and distribute content or products. But again, for the most part, companies like Twitter and Facebook don't have physical products. So what does this come back to? What is it that we're talking about when we're saying cost to produce revenue? Well, I've looked at a lot of financial statements, and to be quite honest, it depends on the company. So let's start with Netflix. So here is Netflix. We've got a set of income statements. So for fiscal year 2018, 2017, and 2016, and you'll see cost of revenue right here. And it's a significant cost. So cost of revenue for 2018 fiscal year for Netflix was over 70% of their total operating expenses was cost of revenue. So 70% of their operating expense. So this is not a trivial amount. This was almost $10 billion, and they had $15.8 billion in revenue. Okay, so this is significant cost. And so the question is, what is in the cost of revenue for Netflix? Well, what you have to do is you have to go to the notes to the financial statements. For any time you see cost of revenues, go to the notes, which follow the financial statements in the disclosure. So for Netflix, what you find is that the majority of the cost of revenues pertains to amortization. So you remember amortization expense. Normally you have intangible assets and you expense them over time. Well, there's two types of amortization that Netflix is incurring. Number one relates to producing original content. If you are a subscriber to Netflix, you know that they come up with shows like Orange is the New Black. So when they come up with these unique shows that's their own original content, that costs a lot of money. So if they pay $40 million to produce this show, they don't expense it all in the current period. They expense it over time. They capitalize it, which means they make it an asset and then expense it over time through amortization, which appears under cost of revenue. And you could see where this comes back to our definition of, okay, it's a cost of producing revenue, and we're producing original content. Even though that's not a physical product, you could kind of see it that way. You could see where this would be called cost of revenue. So that makes sense. Also, they amortize the licensing of content. So licensing content is from, so let's say Universal Studios. They make movies, and then Netflix enters into a 5-year agreement to be able to show certain Universal Studios movies on Netflix. So that the cost there would also be amortized over time. So that as well is going to appear in cost of revenue. So basically for Amazon, you can think about the main cost is either producing their own shows or licensing those shows from other people who've made shows or movies. And so that's all amortization, but it's specifically under this cost of revenue account, which is their biggest cost. Now, let's take a look at Snapchat. So Snapchat and their financial statement, so here's the most recent year. So we got 2016, 2017, 2018 fiscal year. We've got their income statement. You'll see cost of revenue right here, and it's a significant cost. Here they actually have more R&D and general administrative costs, so it's not as substantial. It is a substantial cost to Snapchat. I mean, look at here. It's a substantial cost. I mean, it's almost $800 million in the 2018 fiscal year, but it's not to the extent of Netflix. So when you say, okay, well, Snapchat isn't producing movies or licensing movies, so what is the cost of revenue for Snapchat? Well, if you think about what is it that Snapchat is doing to be able to produce revenue? Well, they have a website and they have an app. And so what are the costs involved in providing those services that are so necessary for revenue to be generated by Snapchat? Well, they need to either have their own data centers, or they have to lease data centers from another organization, right? They have, think of all the photos and stuff that you, if you use Snapchat, all the photos and everything that they need to be able to store on servers. Okay, and so all those costs, any depreciation related to the servers, any web hosting costs, anything related to data infrastructure. Okay, we think about all these things as being related to data infrastructure. They also mention advertising measurement services, traffic acquisition costs, energy costs. So you think about how much energy it costs to be able to run all these servers and so forth is probably quite expensive. And then any compensation related to the staff. So actually in this cost of revenue is included some salaries. Now, that is not all of the salaries though, because look, they have general and administrative. So you know that the CEO's salary, for example, is probably going to be under general and administrative. It's not everybody's salary that's in cost of revenue. It's just anything related to data infrastructure. So you see that cost of revenue, you can see where it ties back to this idea of the main cost of producing revenue for Snapchat, that's maintaining a website and maintaining an app. For Netflix, it's producing and licensing content for their subscribers. If you'd like to learn more about cost of revenue, check out the article that I've linked below in the description section.